What's wrong with you people?
Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast. My name is Matt Hensley, and I'm joined by Dr. Kyle, non-alcoholic beerman. And if you are looking for a Christ-centered, scripture-driven, and student-focused undergraduate education, then look no further than Texas Baptist College in Fort Worth, Texas. TBC is dedicated to providing trustworthy Christian higher education to undergraduate students, no matter where God is calling them. And on October 21st, you have the opportunity to explore everything they have to offer at their fall preview day. Students and parents are invited to tour the campus, talk to the faculty, explore degree offerings, and meet fellow students. And so let Texas Baptist College help you find your calling. Fall preview day is free, so get registered today at texasbaptist.com/preview. And Kyle, I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Are you still in quarantine?
No, I'm out as of today. So for those of you who maybe haven't seen, on Sunday, on Saturday, my wife started feeling bad, and so she took a test on Saturday. She was negative. Sunday, she woke up feeling better, but I was supposed to go preach. And so I said, you know what, just to be safe, because we've known some people who felt bad, tested negative one day, tested positive the next day before they went somewhere. So I was like, just to be safe, why don't you take another test? And so she wound up positive on Sunday. So had to call in a backup preacher and had to cancel a trip to Atlanta this week. But despite being around my wife and who I know tested positive, and our daughter who probably had it based on just kind of how she was feeling, despite being around them 24/7 for 5-6 days, I tested negative. So I am out of quarantine as of today. We're recording Thursday morning. I am out today. Freedom.
Congratulations. I'm glad that you did not go as patient zero.
Yes. I did not infect anyone this time.
This time is the key operative word there. But do you know what?
I was bummed. I was bummed that I had to miss our meeting in Atlanta this week until yesterday when it ended, and I shut my computer and I walked to my back porch instead of having to go to the Atlanta airport. That was the only time that I was like, this is okay. This is all right.
There are perks to it.
Yes.
But Kyle, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, we are today, on the 4th. This will go live on the 5th and be live on the 9th. Do you know what happened August 9th, 2019?
That is when we released Replanting Rural Churches.
It is the greatest book ever written after the Holy Bible.
That's right. There you go. It's certainly the shortest book that was ever written after this.
No, because I have a few other ones that we got out.
At the time, it was the shortest book ever written.
The shortest book ever written. And it's even shorter than I think some of those, a book you'll actually read series that came out a while back that were meant to be really short booklets. I think it was shorter than that. Also had more typos, I'm sure, as well. But it's neat to see how it had encouraged people, how it is encouraging people, and I believe how it will continue to encourage pastors. I know a few courses that use it and different seminars that use it. Obviously, some conventions picked it up, and many pastors picked it up. And so if you picked it up, this is our thank you for paying for our daughters and children having braces and all of that good stuff.
Yes.
We appreciate your generosity there. It is still available on Amazon and really wherever books are sold. Replanting Rural Churches. And I think right now, last I looked, it was down 30-something% and $6 or so that you can get it on Amazon. And so feel free to pick that up. We'll put it in the show notes. And if you've already picked it up, maybe get it for a pastor friend that you know is about to start at his church, because whether they're in a rural church, whether they're in a city church, whether it's really a replanting situation or not, there's a lot of principles in that book, namely 4 of them, that will help them thrive in their ministry context wherever they are. And of course, we took the preach, pray, love, and stay approach and alliterated it because we were true Southern Baptists. And so we had preaching, praying, passion, and perseverance. Woo wee!
That's right.
That was nice. That was nice. So yeah, pick that up. We're really thrilled that it's still out there and we didn't get canceled from it. So
Yes, that's right. Not yet. Hasn't been pulled off the shelves and
I also
still available.
I also will take this moment to publicly apologize to how much I roasted you over us publishing that, particularly about the perseverance side and staying. And then you left and went to NAM almost immediately. Well, shortly thereafter. I gave you a hard time for that, Kyle. And then a year later, I was
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So anyway,
thank you. Thanks for that long overdue. Now, for the record, it was almost 2 years after we published the book.
we don't have to get into those details. We're going to tell people it's 2 weeks after we told everybody
Okay.
you were gone, and a year later. No, we're grateful for the opportunity to write it, and I think we have some things in the works to be looking for. And but that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about Calvinism. Just kidding. No, we're not. We're talking about hey, pastor, chill, calm down, and just preach the word. Y'all had an article that came out from Andy Addis, I believe, on the Replant blog. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what he was talking about there. And, you can sign on to Twitter to know on any given day. Today, the Lord's Day, August 4th, 2000, or Day of the Lord, August 4th, 2022. You can find out exactly what you're supposed to be mad about, angry about, talking about, preaching about. And then tomorrow, it will change. And then the next day, it will change. And I remember college where the arguments swirled around free will and determinism and predestination and free agency of man and all the different isms of this world. And obviously, some of the end times talk and all of that kind of stuff. We remember those conversations and we still have those conversations. And those conversations are worthwhile. But when it comes to Sunday, in the time to preach the word, this call to calm down, chill out, take a breath, and just preach the word. And he kind of based this off of a passage that he came across in Romans 11:20, that he says, "So do not become proud, but fear." And he's talking about how Paul was speaking to Gentiles and the vine that is the kingdom of God, that he was warning them instead of thinking so much about themselves, that they need to remember that broken off branches don't do anything on their own. We are engrafted into Christ and his family, and it is about him. Only the gardener can save us from the brush pile, if you will. And so instead of arrogance, then, thinking we have it all together, we have it all figured out and all of that, we need to tremble. And so he offers this same advice. So Kyle, talk to us about that and those that are listening in. Of course, we've got pastors, many pastors, and lay leaders, of course, too. But give us some of this advice in your words.
Yeah. So I've heard it said that preaching is like giving birth every Sunday, only to wake up on Monday to realize that you're pregnant again. Right. So I don't know who first said it, but that's a pretty good analogy. And
Kyle,
we've talked about this.
I want to pause you and say that I identify as a male. I'm not. I don't intend to become pregnant. So I just want to point that out.
Yes, let's not take that analogy to a full blown conclusion. We can, but and I don't know who came up with that, but I think it is pretty. It's a good metaphor because every week there's a deadline, and I know we've talked about this before, but I think it's important at this point to just remind ourselves every single Monday morning when you get into the office, Sunday is coming, and every pastor that I know feels that pressure, and especially you mentioned social media and kind of the proclivity that we can sometimes feel there to be angry about the next whatever the hot button issue of the week is, um, but also I think social media there comes a pressure to pull off this perfectly polished service like the church down the street, the church in the next town over, your buddy on Instagram, um, whoever. And so we can begin to get into these unrealistic expectations that if we don't pull off the perfect service, if everything doesn't just click the way it's supposed to, and if we're not right within our time allotment, then we somehow failed. And I think what Andy's trying to do in this article is just remove some of that pressure. That the Holy Spirit um, is not dependent upon your video playing exactly where it's supposed to play. He's not dependent upon, at 11:23 the worship leader says amen and you step into the spotlight on the stage. Like that, we don't have to worry about it being that polished all the time. Instead, I think what Andy's trying to get at is to take the pressure off of pulling off this wonderful service and focus on faithfully proclaiming the word week in and week out.
Yeah, and I think, and let me also say, I've never really been a topical guy, so I'm going to speak a little bit from ignorance here. But this also, in my opinion, is one, again, without, having that other experience. This is something that I think is helpful when it comes to preaching verse by verse through books of the Bible. Because if I was thinking that, this was the sermon that I had, the only sermon that I have in just the main text, the greatest text ever, all this kind of stuff, and it's just Leviticus 25, like I had, a couple of weeks at First Baptist Farmersville, which I was very grateful it was Leviticus 25 and not,
Not like 15. Yeah.
bodily emissions or something like that. But I got the year of Jubilee, and so it helped me to remember that we had covered 24 chapters, and then we've still got more to come. And so this was only one day of all of these. And yes, we want to seize every opportunity, make the most of every opportunity, make sure that we're faithful to the word in every opportunity, all of that kind of stuff. But also take a time to realize that yes, we need to seize the day, all of that kind of stuff, and realize that we could pass away, we could be fired, all of those kinds of things. But view this as the long game. And so each and every Sunday, yes, we're trying to be faithful. Yes, we want to preach the best sermon, all of that kind of stuff. But every sermon is not going to be a home run. And even, teams that hit a couple of home runs in a row, if the other team is just singling and doubling and playing that small ball well for the entire game, they're very likely to win, even if you got two or three home runs. And so when you view that whole, Romans or that whole of Leviticus, and you see that as this massive, let's just call it for the metaphor purposes, a game, and that's the whole season and all of that kind of stuff. Each of those sermons is one of your games, and you're going up there just to be faithful, to just win, and just be faithful with the text and so forth, and not feel like you've got to fix everything and do everything in one sermon because there's another one to come. And you had one last week, and this was something that I struggled with as a youth pastor because I would get those opportunities to preach, and that was my chance to fix everything in the pastor's doctrine and cover everything that I wanted to cover, and I didn't need to do that. And I had to realize that those were the Sundays. It was the Lord's Day, our chance to worship. I was given a text. I had a text, and I was there to preach the text, not fix years of this or that, or prepare us for years of this or that. And so I think that allowed me to kind of calm down and just be faithful with the text that I had that particular Sunday. Kyle?
Yeah, so a while back, it's been a couple of years, but we covered an article from Joe McKeever, and it was like the top 10 things pastors shouldn't say from the pulpit. And one of them was, oh, I just haven't had time to prepare as well this week. And I agree with that. I don't think you want to start off, and I don't think you want to just tell your people, hey, I didn't really study this week. But I do think it's okay to let your folks know, like if it's just been a wild week and things aren't like clicking in the service or whatever, I think that's okay to acknowledge. And so this last Sunday, we had one of those in our church. So our pastor began his sabbatical. He's on a 6-week sabbatical. And I was supposed to preach for the first Sunday to kick it off. Well, throughout the week, we started hearing about more and more people that were testing positive with COVID, and I mean, they were just dropping like flies. So, um, our youth pastor, who is kind of the permanent backup for these 6 weeks, he was out, or he tested positive. And I went, okay, it's fine. I'll be there. It's all good. And then, as I mentioned, Michelle tested positive on Sunday morning, and so of our normally full four uh, ministerial staff, our children's minister was the only one who was there on Sunday morning. And I loved how she handled that when she did the announcements at the beginning, because she just stood up and she was like, "Look, folks, here's the deal. Like, things have gone terribly wrong." And her husband, who's one of our deacons, filled in and preached and just did a fantastic job. But I think there was kind of an exhale when she just got up and kind of acknowledged this elephant in the room. Hey, we this is not a Sunday where we have it all together. You're going to see kind of some a little bit of confusion here and there because things fell apart at the last minute. And and yet, um, God moved. The worship was powerful. The sermon was fantastic. Her husband Toby preached from 2 Timothy 2:2 about passing the faith and leadership on to the next generation. And God was glorified even in the middle of this kind of chaotic mess that happened at the last minute. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that, because then we get to turn the attention to the Lord and say, even when our plans fall apart completely, God's still glorified, and He doesn't need everything to click in order to move in the middle of the service. And that should, as Andy mentioned in the article, that should take the pressure off of us, so that, as he mentioned in the title, we can calm down and just preach, calm down, proclaim the word, point people to who Jesus is, point people to the greatness of God, and help them see that even in the middle of the mess, God is still good. He's still at work in their lives.
Yeah, I think the funniest moment at First Baptist Farmersville was when I was preaching and I had to do the announcements, and I walked up and I said, I know it could be hard to tell, but I am not Bart Barber." And so there's a lot of laughs, all of that kind of stuff, and it's just, as he said, it's important to resist that urge that we have to make the people that are there, whether they're visitors, you want to put on a good first impression, all that kind of stuff, and all of that is fine. But the urge to pull off something that is just so great and so wonderful and so
Yeah,
perfect that you have the best church since the Apostle Paul retired, the best worship band in the universe since, I don't know, Casting Crowns. That was the first one that came to mind. That you're the best preacher since Adrian Rogers. You're none of those things. Your church is not, all of that, so we need to remember that and just aim, like we've said many times on this show, to be faithful in that long obedience in the same direction that Eugene Peterson talks about and wrote about so well is what is key. Because if you're just breaking your back every week to just pull off the greatest show on turf, what was that? Was that the thing that the St. Louis Rams, I think, did for a while when they
I
were
think that's
the
right. Yeah.
greatest show on turf? Like, if you're trying to do the greatest show on turf week in and week out, you're going to burn out or flame out. Be faithful with the little things, small things. Know when you don't have your A game on, and so forth, and just aim for faithfulness. And because we have that in every other area of our life. We want our days, with our kids to be great. And then there's days, I've got teenagers at home that they wake up and they're wearing that Moody college shirt, and I'm like, that's not the college. That's a moody teenager in front of me. It's like, well, you just got a sign that says I'm moody today. And so there's days like that kind of has to change some of our plans, or whatever, or you have a great vacation planned, or some kind of event planned, and you realize you've got COVID or one of your kids is sick or something like that you're used to that kind of stuff in every other area of your life. And so the church is not going to be immune to that. You're going to lose your sound guy. You're going to lose your greeters one day. The printer machine, if you're still doing bulletins, is going to break, and you're not going to have the bulletins ready. Or we all know this, the slides don't get turned on time or something like that. That's not the time to gripe and nitpick, all of that kind of stuff. It's just part of it. Be faithful in the small things, in the big things, and trust God with the results. And as he said, may he increase and we decrease. And that we can't just look at our worship services and say, look how great Matt is, or look how great Kyle is, because then nobody's saying that. But look how great God is. And so that needs to be our aim. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, just be encouraged. So even as you're listening to this, preparing for Sunday, something's going to go wrong. Just assume something's going to go wrong in your sermon. Don't stress out about it. And even, I've always been one kind of like you, Matt. Like if something just went like terribly wrong, acknowledge it. Like everybody's already there, and if you just acknowledge it, like that kind of takes all the anxiety out of the room, and even allows a little humor to come in, and that's a really good way just to decompress and then use that to say, to point people back to Jesus, who works even in the middle of mistakes.
Yep. Awesome, man. Well, I love you. I'm glad you didn't catch COVID, and I'm glad you didn't give it to anybody. And
yes.
And I will be praying and ask you all to pray. I know that, this is one of those things that it's difficult. It's a season that we're going to be with for a while. And like flu, colds, all that kind of stuff. It takes some of our great leaders out at times. And so we've got to, transition and get people into various roles. And your church is probably dealing with the exact same thing that Kyle's did, and trying to fit those different spots together and make sure everything happens on Sunday. But at the end of the day, get the song sung, the prayers prayed, and the sermon preached, and just aim to glorify God and be faithful. And that faithfulness might be a sacrifice fly, might be a single, and who knows? It might be a walk-off home run, and the rapture happens, and we go to glory. Who knows? So, Kyle, send us out before I say something more heretical.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening today, and until next time, may your copy be as black as night and as bold as the gospel you declare.
What's wrong with you people?